You're listening to Bold Hearts, Big Moves, the show for female entrepreneurs who want it all: a thriving business, deep self love, and fulfilling relationships. I'm Erin Anderson, and each week we will dive into how to set stronger boundaries, make empowered choices, and show up in life and business with boldness, authenticity, and heart. Because let's be real, the money you make is directly related to the love that you have for yourself and the strength of your relationships. So if you're ready to lead with love and make those big moves with those bold hearts, let's dive in. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Bold Hearts, Big Moves. Okay, so last week we talked about the prove it problem, right? And again, thank you guys for your patience as I get these episodes out to you. Sometimes they're going to be every week, sometimes it'll be every other week. And I apologize again for that level of inconsistency. That is definitely not something that I wanted in my business. But as I'm up leveling and as I'm bringing in just basically new things into this business and letting it grow into what it is meant to be, it is getting kind of hard to make sure that I have everything scheduled and ready to go out. And so my goal is to make sure I have a lot of episodes ready to go out for you guys. So that way we can be a lot more consistent through, and you can get a podcast at least once a week. But please just be patient. If one just doesn't show up that week, it is coming the next week. So thank you so much for your patience with me as I continue to grow. And I really actually do want to do something really great for you guys. Uh, when I can get back into this really, really consistent routine. And so be watching for that. I'll be thinking about some great things. And if you guys have some requests of some things that you might like, please let me know in the podcast comments. So anyway, today, let's get into what we're talking about today. Today, we are talking about something that might challenge the way you've been thinking about growth, success, and maybe even why you haven't quite reached that level you're working so hard for yet. Because if you're anything like most of the women I work with, and even the men, like I work with women and men, you've probably thought at some point, I just need a better strategy and maybe a better marketing plan or a better funnel, a better offer, better content calendar, a better social media schedule, better sales process, etc. And here's the deal, like I get that. I was actually taking a look at my business and the way it flows not too long ago, and I'm like, okay, like I can see some discrepancies here. I must need more lead generation. And as I got looking at my lead generation and actually looking at it, my lead generation wasn't the problem. It was actually my conversion. And I was like, oh, right. We're kind of talking the same thing here. When we're talking about strategy, I mean, we're looking at our leads, our conversion, our funnels, what is our frameworks, our processes, etc., that we're taking people through. Like that's all piece of our strategies, right? But sometimes, while strategy absolutely does matter, I've noticed something that's actually really, really fascinating. Um, and it is that most women don't have a strategy problem. And I'd even say, the men I've talked to that want something different in their business, it's not a strategy thing for them either. Like we can strategize all day long. And usually those strategies will work if this problem is taken care of. And that is the safety problem. Hands down, across the board, when strategies aren't working, that's when I start taking a look at what is causing my client to not feel safe. Um, what is causing them to not lean into the action? What is causing them to feel that fear of taking the next right step? And it's not a strategy problem, it is a safety problem. Most likely, your strategies are fine. Unless if you're brand new at business, which you might be, and you're not maybe understanding like strategy and things like that. But if you've been in business for a while, your problem probably isn't strategy. It's probably a safety issue. And even if you're brand new and you don't understand strategy, it's still kind of a safety issue because you're like, hey, I don't understand this. I don't like it's kind of scary to me to put myself out there, right? That's a safety issue too. And until we address that, no amount of strategy will create the breakthrough that you're hoping for. And so today I want to talk to you about your business and how it's actually probably not more strategy that you need, but it's actually more safety. Because one of the easiest things that we do in business, or when business feels hard, I should say, is assume that somewhere we have information we're missing. And I have totally been guilty of this, you guys. Like I'm buying the other course, joining another program, watching another training, listening to another expert, and before we know it, like we've collected enough business information to build like 10 companies. And yet we still feel stuck. Why? You're doing like all the work. You're doing everything right, or that's what we're telling ourselves, right? But it's because knowledge and action are not the same thing. Uh, most of my clients already know more than enough that to move forward. Like they know how to move forward. They get the strategy. And so they're sitting here asking ourselves like, do I know what to do? But the problem is that's actually not the question we need to be asking ourselves. If you sit down and ask for just a second, like, do I feel safe enough to do it? And you really sit in that. Do you notice like maybe an anchoring or maybe a gut feeling like this? Ooh, no, I really don't. Right? Do you actually feel safe enough to take the next steps? Like, I remember when like and I don't want to necessarily say exactly like where this business is headed yet, just because I have a vision for it. I have the frameworks and I'm going this direction. Okay. But because it's not quite there yet, I'm a little hesitant to say anything. But I remember when God told me that's the direction He wanted me to take this business, I sat back and I was like, oh my gosh, like really? And it wasn't a feeling of woohoo. It was like terror. That seems so scary. Like, why do you want me to take it this direction, right? And what I've noticed is yes, like as you guys have noticed too, like sometimes like podcasts become inconsistent as I'm taking it this direction, right? But as I'm taking it this direction, it's very interesting to see how success keeps falling in my way because I'm leaning into the faith behind the business, faith that I can create what needs to be created, faith that I can do what needs to be done, right? And faith that God's got my back in this. This is not like the direction I'm taking my business right now is not something, honestly, gosh, even when I started coaching, I never, ever would have seen this for myself. But God saw it. Literally, that's the truth. And as I leaned into what God saw in me, this whole idea, this whole framework became born. Like this idea that really what is underneath everything that we do and everything that we create is identity and safety in the identity, right? Because when we feel safe, then we can actually take action on the things that we know we need to do, like raise our prices, launch the offer, have the sales conversation, post the content, hire the person, delegate, ask for support, and become more visible. But when we don't feel safe, we don't do those things. We don't do the strategy. And it's not because we're lazy or unmotivated or incapable. It's because somewhere deep inside of ourselves, we just don't feel safe enough. We don't feel safe enough to do it. And I can tell you, you know, that's honestly what created my burnout. Um, when I actually stopped everything in my business. Like, to be fair, guys, I actually had about like 3 to 6 months worth of podcast content, which was good, but I stopped doing everything except for just talking to the clients I had. I didn't market, I didn't do my book, I didn't do a podcast episode, I didn't do anything because I was so scared about the direction that God told me to take my business and what he wanted me to do. And it's not about like what I can take on. Like I can take on a lot and because I'm a very organized, very precise person. That's why I can take on the business and school and kids and everything else and make sure that there's time for me in there. Like I can do those things. But what caused my burnout was the fear of me being able to actually hold what God is asking me to do next. It was absolute terror. And this is why I'm saying, like, one of the biggest misunderstandings in personal development and business isn't isn't because we think we need more strategy. It's people think they're afraid of failure. Many women are actually afraid of success, men too. Like there really is a fear of success because if you hit that level, then you have to ask yourself, what do I have to do to maintain it? And you're not sure if you have the capacity to keep it going. And it's not a conscious thing, it's subconscious because success changes things. It creates visibility, responsibility, expectations, opinions, relationships. And success often asks us to become someone we've never been before. So that's why we're sitting here like, do I have the capacity? Do I even have the capacity to hold this? And if your nervous system learned that standing wasn't safe, being seen won't feel safe. Um, your nervous system learned that attention led to criticism. If that's the case, then visibility won't feel safe. And if your nervous system learned that receiving created guilt, money is definitely not going to feel safe. You're not going to receive money if it leads to guilt. And if your nervous system learned that mistakes create shame, growth won't feel safe. So what happens? You consciously self-sabotage. You stop yourself. Or it's not a consciously, it's you subconsciously self-sabotage, right? And when you subconsciously do that, you're also subconsciously finding reasons not to move forward. So one of my favorite things to tell clients is the ceiling is rarely in your business. It's usually, again, in your capacity to receive what it is you say you want. And if you think about that, every level of growth asks us to receive something new. More responsibility, more money, more attention, more clients, more leadership, more influence, more trust, more support. And the next level isn't about producing more, it's about holding more. And if we don't feel safe holding more, We naturally avoid the ceiling, not because we want to, but because our nervous system is trying to protect us. And, like I think about like this next version of my own business, and like, yeah, that's all true. It's asking me to be more visible. It's asking me to be more responsible, create more money, to hold more money, to get more attention, more clients, etc. And the thing that scared me was, again, just being able to hold it all. Do I have the organizational capacity to hold this? As one person? No, I don't. Like I had to be honest with myself. And that's the thing with my business is I was so busy trying to operate as a one person show. And it's no wonder why everything felt way too overwhelming when this next piece came in. It's because this is not meant to be a one person show. And hiring people was terrifying to me, really terrifying. But like I said, as things kind of settled and my nervous system took some time to calm down, it took some time, a lot of time actually. Um, then I was finally able, like I said, to kind of lean in and take a look at what this next piece actually looks like. And when I got clear, it helped me calm down because it wasn't this, you know, out there type of construct. I actually began seeing the way it worked. I was able to sit down and just look at what needs to be done and say, okay, I can do it, right? Because I had clarity. And that was a big shift for me. It wasn't about like comfort, because putting myself out there like this and uh it's not comfortable not having a podcast episode out every single week. I like I said, that's not what I started these podcasts for. I wanted to connect with my listeners every single week, at least, right? But safety is not the same thing as comfort. It's not. Growth is often very uncomfortable. Have you ever, when you were a kid, did you ever experience growing pains? They're not fun, right? But we can still be safe. We can still create safety even in uncomfortable growth because safety looks like that clarity. I can take a mistake and still love myself, or I can make a mistake and still love myself. I can hear no and still trust myself. I can disappoint someone and still be okay. I can misunderstand and still know who I am. I can be misunderstood and still know who I am. I can launch something imperfectly and survive still. I can receive more money without feeling guilty. I can be visible without abandoning myself. That mentality, that's what safety sounds like. And when women develop that kind of safety and that belief system, uh, they stop needing constant reassurance and they stop overthinking every decision and they stop waiting for perfect confidence. They move, right? And this isn't even just something about business. I've got a cute little client who, he's leaning in, he is leaning into a business, but he's really, really new at this. But he's constantly overthinking everything. Like that is one of the biggest things I've noticed about him is how much this client tends to overthink things. And what that overthinking is his nervous system asking, am I safe to make the decisions I need to make? I'm really seriously looking for safety. And when I've helped him find that safety, he's actually been able to make the moves he needs to make. But without the safety, his life feels like confusion and chaos. And this is why I talk about boundaries all the time, is because those boundaries actually create safety. They anchor into the safety. Um, the boundary of I know who I am. I know what I value and I know my value. I know what I will and will not accept and what I will and will not tolerate. I know what I'm responsible for. I know what I'm not responsible for. Boundaries remove the confusion around this because they give us clarity about who we are and just how we're going to show up in life, how we're going to behave, who we're going to be. And when we have that clarity, um, it we stop having the costs of confusion because confusion costs us our peace and our confidence and our energy, sometimes even our relationships and money. It's not that uncommon. And so when we become clear about who we are and make decisions about who we are and who we're going to constantly be, we become safer inside of ourselves. And when we're safer inside of ourselves, we can safely receive what we want. That's when we finally become available for the things that we say that we want in life. So I've noticed also something about women who create sustainable success. These are women who aren't constantly forcing or hustling. They're not trying to be someone else. They're just creating a very deep trust within themselves. And they know how to recover, they know how to regulate, they know how to listen. Their listening boundary and their speaking boundary is very, very strong. And they know how to hold the boundaries. They know how to hold the line and they know how to say no. That's not in my space. That's not in my field of reference. That's not where I'm going. They also know how to repair relationships after mistakes. They know how to return to peace. And because they feel safe within themselves, they're willing to take bigger risks because they trust themselves in the risk. And this is one of the greatest paradoxes of entrepreneurship. And it's basically that the safer you become emotionally, mentally, spiritually, internally, the braver you become externally. So, what if you're not stuck, though? I want to offer you a different perspective. What if you're actually standing on the edge of expansion then? What if your business isn't still asking for another strategy? What if you're asking for a different relationship with yourself? Because if you're not stuck, that's wonderful. But success in business takes a certain type of relationship with oneself. And what if the next level in your business isn't another certification or another course or another tactic? What if it's trust? What if it's self-compassion? What if it is the unbreakable boundary? What if it's learning to feel safe enough to be seen? And what if it's learning to receive? Because every level of business growth asks us to become the kind of person that can hold it. It's asking us to clear space, to clear the clutter, to clear the confusion. And so, confusion, if you're feeling it, it isn't necessarily a bad thing. But you need to understand that, yes, courses might be able to help clear the confusion, but confusion often leads to, do I feel safe enough to receive what it is I want? And if you can look at it that way, when confusion comes up for you, then you can sit back and say, oh, is there a safety issue here? Okay. And one of the things I love about this is that's a faith move because faith isn't always certainty. Faith is trust. It's moving forward before you have all the answers. It's believing that God can help you and will literally sustain you and support you to become the person that your life calling, your life mission actually requires you to be. He didn't make a mistake when he made you. Remember? He made perfection. And so what we're building in this life as a person, who we are personally, if we're moving in that direction, God is absolutely going to help sustain this. And sometimes the next level of business isn't necessarily about learning more, it's about trusting more. Trusting God, trusting your wisdom, trusting your experience, trusting your boundaries, trusting you, and trusting that you can handle what comes next. Because you can. You absolutely, absolutely can. Remember, trust is seeing what's constant, and we need consistency in order to receive. We do. So this week, I want to leave you with a question. Where in your business have you been looking for strategy when what it is you really need is safety? Where are you waiting to feel confident before you act? And where are you trying to learn your way around a lesson that can only be experienced? What could change if you found a little more safety inside of yourself, a little more confidence? Because, friends, your business will rarely outgrow your ability to trust yourself. Rarely. And the next level might not require another strategy. It might simply be you being the person that's safe enough to receive it. See, that's the thing that I'm learning about life, is it's not about proving. Remember, we don't prove it. That's a problem. It's simply about being who God created us to be. So if this episode spoke to you today and this was helpful and you would like further help with your safety, there's a strategy in safety. This is true. Okay. But if you'd like some help with that, so you can hit your next levels and find the safety that you need to be able to create those next levels, feel free to schedule that call with me. We're going to look over your boundaries. We're going to look over where you feel safe, where you don't feel safe. Let's see if we can't put some support places in place for you, so that way you can create the next piece in your business. All right, my loves. Hope today's episode was helpful for you. Go out and create some safety, regardless. And I'll see you next week. Bye.
All right, Boundary Boss Babes. I'm super excited that you tuned in with me today. Make sure you tune in again next week as we chat about more Boundary Boss Babe topics. We're going to get into so many other things about how to set boundaries with your business, how to set boundaries with your relationships, so you can truly have the time, the money, and the flexibility that you are seeking. So tune in next week. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast. Let your other Boss Babe friends know about it. And also, if you've got any questions, make sure you submit them into the podcast by clicking on the send us a text message at the bottom of the podcast description. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. See you later, Boss Babes.